Hi, everyone. Welcome to our October Big Think. My name is Mel from What School Could Be, and I'm super excited to dive into today's topic. We're getting a chance to explore how the middle years can be reimagined as a time of possibility and purpose and growth, and really what it takes to nurture agency in our youth learners. So, joining me today are two incredible educators who not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. So, first, we have Dr. Sadrena Pledger. She has described herself as the liberator she's never had. And that pretty much tells you a lot about how she moves through this world as someone who doesn't just teach justice, but lives it with joy and purpose. Michelle is the founder for Living for Liberation, and she's also the director of liberation at High Tech High Graduate School of Education, where she helps educators create learning environments that are culturally responsive and student-centered. Some people might know Michelle as the author of Liberate, a pocket-sized guide for liberatory learning, and others might even recognize her as the cruise director of the Deeper Learning Conference in San Diego. But whether she's writing or teaching or building liberatory spaces, her work really does remind us that learning can and must be rooted in justice and joy. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me, Mel. I'm excited for today's conversation.
Me too. Me too. Our second guest today is Chris Balme, and Chris is an education leader and a school founder. And he's really spent his entire career helping young people grow into their full potential. He's the founding principal of Hakuba International School in Japan and the creator of Argonaut, an online advisory program that supports middle schoolers all around the world. In fact, he was just in a session with his middle schoolers, and I know in an hour or so he'll be in another one. Before that, he co-founded Millennium School in San Francisco, which is a lab school really grounded in developmental science and student well-being. Chris is also a writer, and his first book, Finding the Magic in Middle School, very quickly became a bestseller. And he has a newer one, Challenge Accepted. It was released just about a month or so ago, and that's for teens and tweens sort of navigating this phase of their life. Chris, I think what's really powerful about your work is that it recognizes the middle school years as a time of really huge growth for our youth, but it also honors that they're already whole people that are curious and wise and ready to lead if we just give them that opportunity. So super excited to talk to you today, Chris. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Mel. Really fun to see you again. And Michelle, such an honor to be with you and meet you here. I'm excited for this.
Likewise. We were talking earlier about this being an intellectual blind date because we haven't met each other. It's going to be our first conversation, and Mel's the matchmaker, and we're excited.
It's going to be great.
I love that. I love that. Well, actually, I might be starting at a really painful point in history. I hope not. I hope not. But, you know, so many of us went through middle school years, sort of like bracing for this impact, right? But what we're exploring today is sort of reframing that whole idea and recognizing that, again, that huge potential that's contained in that period of development. So what I'm thinking about here is maybe not starting with theory or pedagogy or framework, but really just the people that you were back in those preteen and teen years. So Michelle, I'm going to start with you. And I want you to like think back at your own adolescence, kind of what was happening back then in your own becoming. And I'm wondering if there was anyone special who saw you as the Michelle that you were back then, but also as the Michelle that you were born to be today.
Ooh, this is like a layered question. I love going back sometimes. Middle school is not necessarily the point I love to visit, but I'll just say that it was challenging. It was difficult. I did not experience belonging. I was constantly in search of belonging. And some people who know my story know that I grew up with a ton of internalized oppression and just self-hatred because I went to a predominantly white elementary school that kind of shaped my views about what it meant to be Black and thinking that white was better or being white adjacent was better. So there was just a lot of like internal shame and self-hatred that took a while to unlearn. So in middle school, that was still happening for me. And so I was pretty much trying to do anything I could to try to belong, whether that was making sure my grades were really great so that even though I didn't look like some of my peers, that would somehow be overlooked because I'm like academically successful. I would people please to try to belong. It was just constantly just trying to find my space. I will say there was one teacher, Mrs. Alps, who told me one time, she was like, Michelle, you're a writer. And that was the first time I had like been described in that sort of asset-based way of something that I enjoyed doing, and not like you're writing, Michelle. It was like you're a writer. And then to now, have written different articles and published a book is like, whoa. So even back then, there were definitely teachers who saw things in me. But at that time, it felt like I had to choose between my cultural identity and my academic identity. And that is really what I work towards now. And as I coach educators and speak, as I want every young person to not feel like they have to choose. I want them to be able to honor and love and learn more about and explore their own cultural identity and the identities of others, and still be academically challenged, develop into independent learners, because it doesn't need to be an either or. We can cultivate both of those as educators. So check out, as you know, for those of you who are already familiar with Chris's work and his love of how to nurture middle schoolers, it's 100% possible. We just need to do it. I think I asked more than you really answered more.
That was amazing. Thank you. Chris, before I jump over to you, I'm going to actually invite the audience to kind of reflect and share, whether it's, in a journal that you have next to you or a Post-it, or if you're in a coffee shop right now, that napkin, go ahead and, talk about it. I'm also really hoping that you folks will be open to dropping any of these reflections in the chat. But my prompt for you all today is, if you had someone like a Michelle or like a Chris truly see you in middle school, what strength or spark might they have noticed? So that's for our audience members. Please drop that in the chat if you so feel the desire to do so. So Chris, I'm going to jump back over to you now. When you're thinking about your own middle school years, what was unfolding for you?
Thank you, Mel. You asked really deep questions. I love how you're going right into it. Yeah, those were years that I was just profoundly lost and confused and bored, and always felt like I had missed the day where they explained all the rules of social life. And I just wished I had been there and someone could tell me, and everyone else must know this, and I'm the only one that doesn't get it. I think that was my general feeling in those years. It's so funny. It's still so funny to me that I work in schools, because I walked out of that building thinking I will never, ever, ever set foot in a middle school again. Thank God. And you just can't say stuff like that without expecting some joke to be played on you. So here we are. I also didn't really have someone who I think saw me directly or created that space of belonging. But I did have, I want to give a shout out to a teacher who made a safe space because they were so authentically themselves. And it was the orchestra teacher, who was this total character, was funny and really emotional, would get so mad, but he was just like, you knew that what you saw was authentic at all times. And I think a lot of the other teachers I had were probably trying to be professionals and thinking that they had to have the mask on and be kind of appropriate and calm at all times. And I really didn't connect with them. So that's a lesson I've taken with me.
For sure. Speaking of lessons, Chris, I want to dig in just a little bit there. You've walked alongside thousands of middle schoolers since that time, right? So I'm wondering, if we flip the script a little bit, what have they taught you about what these years could look like?
Oh man, that's a great question. So much. I mean, I often feel like this guilty sense that I'm learning more from this than they are. Like I'm doing my healing, being here and coming back to more of myself. I think middle schoolers often don't have a choice about how much of themselves to reveal, because they haven't always learned to hide it all yet. And as adults, we have a choice, and sometimes we stay hidden for a long time. I think middle schoolers teach me to be more open and honest, and be weird, and follow passions, and be a beginner. So I recognize they don't really have a choice about it, but they do it with like a lot of grace and style anyways. I admire them, and I think they are in many ways like some of the most motivated people out there, as their brains are going through the biggest change they'll have for the rest of their lives, and they're rolling with these wild wild waves as puberty completely reshapes their brain, and they still can laugh, they still connect. As adults, we have much more calm waters. So I think we can take a lot of inspiration. I've taken a lot of inspiration from them, and often my favorite moments are being kind of a total messy beginner around them. Like as a principal, like learning to play the guitar with my students where they were all way better than me. And like often the ones that I otherwise wouldn't be able to connect with were the ones that would come up and help me and, try to make a better sound come out of that instrument. So moments like that where they're willing to connect, they're willing to be beginners, I'm constantly learning from.
It's so interesting how generous they can be, right? Like we don't want to fail in front of anybody, in particular students, when I know we don't have to be, but sometimes we feel like we should be the experts in the room. And if we just kind of let ourselves go, it just like they just approach everything with so much grace and generosity. And I think that's such a great lesson for us as the adults in the room as well. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So, I think you both design with a really, really deep respect for adolescents. Michelle, like you're coming from this foundation of liberation and culturally responsive pedagogy. And Chris, you're coming from a developmental science and structures that really support growth, like advisory. But I think that even though they're rooted in maybe different traditions, I can see this Venn diagram, right, where they converge in really meaningful ways, especially around what young people need. And so maybe I want to start with kind of a higher level question. And Michelle, if you're okay going first here, how do you think about the relationship between structure and freedom, as well as like challenge and joy? Because they almost seem like they'd be opposing energies, but I'm not sure that they are. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yes. Oh, first of all, I love both of these questions. I'll start with structure and liberation. I'm one of those people who I find freedom in structure, in rituals, in routines. When I know what to expect, it helps calm my nervous system, right? My nervous system doesn't have to work as hard, and my amygdala is less likely to get hijacked. If I can know what I'm about to experience, I can relax a little bit. And that really helps in a lovingly co-designed and structured space. And so I think it just depends on the structure, because if we're talking about an oppressive structure, then I think it's obviously difficult for liberation to coexist in that. But if we're talking about liberatory structures, particularly as it relates to young people, are we co-designing spaces together? What does our co-creation of agreements look like? How are we holding each other lovingly accountable? Then I think liberation can live there. And young people, I've found in my experience, but Chris has done a lot more research in terms of middle schoolers. It's not like they want chaos. Like they benefit when there's a bit of structure. And one of the teams I work on at the High Tech High Graduate School of Education is the Center for Love and Justice, where we support people who want to do liberatory project-based learning. And we do that through the equity stances of identity, place, belonging, dialogue, democratization, all in service of liberation. So even in that project-based learning, there's a structure, but the goal, right, is for liberatory, not only final products and liberatory ends, but like liberatory ways of doing things throughout the entire process. So I do think it's possible for structure and liberation to coexist. And then challenge and joy. I just want everybody out there right now to think about something that you tried to learn how to do and how it felt. Like it was probably hard at first. And then once you finally got it, whether it was riding a bike, whether it was the first time you learned how to post a story on Instagram, I don't know, whatever you're into, there's challenge and that's uncomfortable. But there's also this joy when we are able to persevere, when we're able to have what James Nottingham calls that eureka moment, like when we move through the learning pit and we're having this moment. And so what I think is helpful and what I try to coach teachers around, especially when we're talking about cognitive capacity development, is what's happening when students are in that learning pit, right? Because sometimes that they might be confused, and that confusion might come out as, I hate you, I hate this class, but really they're just confused, and nobody likes to be confused and not know what's going on. But how do we as educators support that process, not by over scaffolding, but by helping them develop those cognitive routines that help get them through that learning pit so they can have that joyful moment. And then the cool thing is they're going to be able to trust their track record. Like, this next thing that's hard, remember that other thing that was hard? And what were some of the strategies that you used to get through that? All right, let's try to apply those here. Maybe we might need new strategies. But it's all this process, because they're not going to always have myself or Chris or any of the educators on this call. They're not going to have them all the time. So we want them to develop that capacity so that when they're not around us, they're able to just do it and feel that self-directed learning and self-gratification.
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite strategy or practice that, if someone is new to these, to that kind of pedagogy, what they might use right away? Is there something you can give a hint or a tip to any of the educators watching?
Yeah, I just did a workshop with some school leaders in Rochester, New York. And so I had them think about something recent that they had experienced productive struggle in. Mm-hmm. And I had them think about what were the strategies, resources, things that served you in moving through that. Because a lot of times I think educators, well, in my experience, they don't know how to move young people through productive struggle because they haven't done the self-work. And this doesn't have to do with just productive struggle. This almost has to do with anything we're talking about, whether it's liberation work. We cannot teach or expect from young people things we have not processed and done ourselves. And so it's important for us to have those experiences of productive struggle, for us to have those experiences of discomfort and moving through that, for us to do our own liberation work, to be able to foster and cultivate that for young people. So most of my work is with adults, not directly with young people. And so a lot of it is that self-work, because once they start to internalize that, then they're able to actually execute it in the classroom or at their school sites.
I love that. So before we jump into Chris's answer, I'm going to maybe toss that out to the audience. So if they have something that they feel comfortable in sharing, that point of productive struggle, or if that's a little too, maybe a little too much self-work right now in this moment, because I know we're going through this quickly, then maybe if anyone in the audience has a practice or a design move that you've maybe helped learners feel free to explore or belong or lead in their environment, we'd love for you to drop it in the chat for other people to learn from and think about as well. Okay, so Chris, back to you then. Again, what are you thinking about that relationship between the structure and freedom, as well as challenge and joy?
First, I'm thinking that, Michelle, everything you're saying is gold, and I love it. I feel like we should just come up with our dream middle school design right here in this session.
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling like a very successful matchmaker right now.
You did well.
You are. Seriously, that'd be really fun. Let's just cook it up. Yeah, I just want to +1 everything you said, and that question of challenge and joy. I'll just add one thought, which is I think the first thing that popped to my head when you said it is the difference between painful challenge and joyful challenge is good company. And sometimes I think with adolescents, the worst parts of the adolescent experience are when you feel alone, I think. And that loneliness sneaks up faster than adults expect, because so many experiences are first time experiences, just first time having emotions of that intensity, or first time with that much social insight, that it can often lead to kind of catastrophizing or feeling like something must be really wrong. And how quickly, though, that flips when you have one space that you feel safe in and you get to hear that other people are also having that experience. And suddenly that nightmarish experience that something's wrong with me flips to laughter and relief and we're in this together. To me, that's what it's all about. If you can have a group that goes with you through this crazy journey, then you make meaning of it. Doesn't mean it's always fun, but it means that it's meaningful. And that's a challenge worth having.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. We've danced around the edges a little bit here, but I'm going to bring us more into this focus. So, we've been talking a little bit about what young people need in order to grow. And I feel like this work, Michelle, you've stated this actually, is asking something of us as well, right? So in order to be the kind of adults that young people need, we often have to release things that we've been taught as well, right? And so I'm sure that in your work, both of you have had to shed certain beliefs or habits or postures even to maybe show up more fully, both for your students and the learning community and even for yourself. So Chris, I'm going to start with you this time. What is something that you've had to unlearn in order to better support your youth learners as maybe they're learning to liberate themselves, to take more agency for themselves, that kind of thing?
The very first thing coming to mind as you said that is achievement culture. And I was, as a student, I was so disconnected and I just focused on achieving in order to feel good about something. And it's so deeply internalized that was the way that you feel good, that it took years and years, I'm still working on it, to try to see people past achievements and past comparison. And working with middle school parents, often it's striking to me that how much fear there is around the level of achievement achieved in middle school, when those are years where I think it's really very safe and appropriate to make a lot of mistakes, and years where it's really worth focusing on how to be a human among other humans. And that's really what can carry us forward with strength toward achievement and beyond. So I think for me, I'm still dismantling the pressure to achieve, because when I say achievement, it's also a very narrow definition. I think that I internalized, healthy competition has to involve choice. And this way that we force kids into competitions they didn't choose to achieve on something that we selected for them, I think is deeply unhealthy. And I know I still carry parts of that in me, and I'm trying to, whenever I spot one, just kind of catch and release. That's an ongoing practice.
For sure. Michelle, what are you thinking at this point? Anything to add to Chris's, or do you have
gosh, so much to add, Mel, because there's so many things that I had to learn to let go of. And there was on one of Chris's Instagram posts, by the way, if you're not following Chris on Instagram and getting his nuggets of wisdom, get after it. You need to get into it. But there was a post where he was talking about adults sort of discounting or not valuing that young people, even if they're not saying anything, they're listening, they know things. And they're wiser. Middle schoolers are wiser than I think many adults give them credit for. Same with elementary. So the first thing that I had encouraged myself to let go of was control. I am someone who's intimately acquainted with my likes and desires, aka control freak. So letting go a bit and co-designing. And when I was teaching at High Tech High, I taught 11th grade and 9th grade. When I finally let go of let's co-design the exhibition together. Let's co-design the project together. It was always better. Young people always have better ideas. And of course, they're more invested because it's their idea. So letting go of that, letting go of oppressive ways of being and knowing and doing that we grew up with, because there are other ways to do and live and exist and learn. I had to let go of the need to be right, because multiple things can be true. The pressure to get it right every time. I'm encouraging, because I teach in our San Diego teacher residency program and our EDL program as well. We're not going to get it right every time. We just aren't. And so we got to alleviate the pressure of we're inevitably going to get some things wrong, but there's so much power in the repair, and it actually leads to deeper connection. We're more connected to the problem. We're more connected to the people involved with the problem when we move through that, in a healthy generative conflict sort of way. I encourage people to let go of being the sage on the stage, because we're going to always know more collectively. I mean, these are things that I'm sure your audience already knows and is already doing, but they'll send this podcast to the people who don't know. And then just getting back to that belief in the self-work. It has to happen. But the last thing I'll say, because I'm a talker, Mel, so you can cut me off at any time, is that in the midst of letting all of our things go, whatever Chris and I are saying, we've got to replace those things with something, or we're just going to regress to the mean. So what are you replacing it with? So if you're letting go of control, okay, I'm replacing that with co-design or student input or whatever. So that's a question I think I would offer our group, is not just what are you letting go of, but what are you replacing those old habits with? so that, there are alternatives that are healthier and more beneficial to young people, but also to the adults in the room. Because when young people are enjoying themselves and being challenged, we're also having a much more enjoyable time too. Like if they're bored, most of the time we're bored too. So, students are I say this all the time, students are at the center of whatever type of learning we're giving them, because people always say student-centered learning. Well, they're at the center of it no matter what kind of learning it is. If it's boring, if it's dry, if it's oppressive, they're at the center of it. If it's liberatory, if it's joyful, if it's challenging, they're at the center of it. And then we as educators, we're at the center of that too. So it just comes down to, what do you want to be at the center of? All right, I'm done talking.
That was so great. Could I jump in with a question for Michelle?
Yes.
I would love to just go do, I love everything that you are saying. And to me, it sounds like you keep pointing back to the self-work that adults need to do to break out of all the kinds of boxes and wounds that just aren't a bad thing. They're just how we accumulate life experience. And then we have the opportunity perhaps to process them. And especially like things like control. I feel that too. Remember when I first started teaching, I was just automatically went to lecture mode. And then it took me a while to realize, like, wow, this is profoundly not working. Why am I doing this? Oh, it's what's been modeled for me for like thousands of hours.
Exactly.
So I'm curious for you, especially as someone who trains teachers. I've thought about this in my own coaching of teachers. If you had your dream scenario of the kind of work you could guide adults through to be ready to be this kind of teacher, leader, guide, mentor, model, all of those things without the constraints of, life stuff, but what would be the dream path you would love to offer adults to do enough work on themselves that they're really ready for what you're talking about?
Oh, this is the loaded question, Chris. No. Okay. I got this. So one, I would let folks know there's never an end date. There's never a ready date. Like this becoming is ongoing. Liberation work is lifetime work. So they would have to know that at the jump. Whatever we're about to start together is forever.
I love that.
On yourself and freeing yourself and freeing other people until the end of time. Okay. So that's what they would have to be like, okay, I'm ready to do life work forever. Once they're cool with that, the two signature workshops that I would start with that would be ongoing is one called a Freedom Flower, which it helps people understand the intersections between their background beliefs, bias, and behavior, and how that shows up in the classroom and at their school sites, because you can't interrupt things that you are not aware of. And so that is like my first main self-work thing. And then when it comes to like the actual space, the environment, they would be in my Freedom Dreaming workshop, which is like with a series where they would be freedom dreaming the type of classroom, school site, what have you, that they want for young people. And the young people will be involved in that freedom dreaming. So I would say Freedom Flower workshop, Freedom Dreaming workshop, we put those together and then do them forever. And we assign them your books, like we're good. We're golden.
I love that. I love the signing up for forever and no ready date. That feels
but I want to know, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Sorry, Mel, we're like just
no. Take it and run.
Tell me what what's your...
Yeah, I mean, plus one to everything you said. And I think where I go first is that, a lot of the things I say, I think adolescents need are actually what we adults need too. We've just maybe developed some more coping mechanisms, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a core need. So I think that back to the achievement culture thing, I think it's really linked to isolation, and the two kind of can feed each other. When we're isolated, we want to achieve, to feel like we've got at least some worth through that. And we're out of connection with other people. So we achieve in ways that are not always healthy for the community as a whole. So my dream, if I was designing the self-work, path, and yes, lifelong path, would be that it involves accompaniment and teachers feeling, or any of us educators feeling, like parents too, that there are groups and spaces where we can be exceptionally honest and through conversation with others make sense of our inner worlds. Because it's really hard, maybe impossible, to do that work in isolation. And you don't need to be told what to do, but you need company along with you, and occasionally some tools and prompts to open up.
Yes. Oh, I love, and I think in the chat too, people are talking about relationships and connections. So that's spot on with what you're talking about, Chris. And that reminds me, we have some people in the chat who founded Our Family Culture, who were also guests on this show. And what I love about what Nancy and Steve are doing is creating this opportunity for those family connections to talk about values, to have the difficult conversations early on with their young people. So that, and then that becomes a practice that is carried on, throughout their adolescence, throughout their teenage years, and obviously on into adulthood. And it's just that power of connection, which is so ancestral to the majority of our cultures. That's like stories, circle, connection. Like that is what education was built on before it was sort of codified and created in the way that it is now. But yeah, so basically we're just going to revolutionize the world in the most positive way, Chris. We've decided.
Heard it here first. It's all thanks to you, Mel.
Watch out, world.
I just want to elevate one comment that was in the chat from Oak Farm Info. And I think it really speaks to what you folks were saying about this being life work. And the comment is self-work. If teachers are doing the self-work, then it is likely that the students will get what they need. Maybe not before exam day, but it will come. So I think that's really important for us to realize that this is a marathon, not a sprint, everyone. So thank you for that, Oak Farm Info, for dropping that in the chat. It is just at the bottom of the hour, so we're going to pause for a really quick minute here. And let me update you on all of the really exciting things that we have going on in the What School Could Be community. So it's already November. I can't believe it. Next week on November 5th, we're going to be hosting an Elevating Teacher Voice event featuring Justin Lai. He's an educational technologist here in Hawaii, super strong proponent of combining creativity and emerging technologies such as AI. You can attend for free at whatschoolcouldbe.org/events. You'll find the registration information there. We also have episode 155 of the What School Could Be podcast that just dropped on Sunday. Host Josh Rapoon has put together an incredible remix of past guests, and not just any guests, but some really incredible youth learners. So obviously the focus of this episode is going to be student voice, and you can listen to that anywhere that you get your podcasts. Ted Dintersmith's new documentary, Multiple Choice, is out. It's already been in 2 film festivals and is scheduled to be screened all across the country. It really challenges the College for All narrative by spotlighting a Virginia school district that's redefining success through career-based learning. You can learn more about how to watch the film and or host a screening of your own at multiplechoicefilm.org. And finally, we invite you to join our free global online community of educators, which both Chris and Michelle belong to. You can connect, exchange ideas, discover really powerful stories there that inspire small steps to big change. Sign up for free at community.whatschoolcouldbe.org. We really hope to see you there. Okay, I have another pain point over here that I want to ask about. So Chris, I'm gonna start with you. I think that school shouldn't be separate from the real world. It's really the world that our youth move through every single day. And yet, unfortunately, it can feel really disconnected, right, from life's bigger purpose. I know you write this incredible Substack. There's an article that you wrote recently, I think, called Whose Real World? And we'll drop the link there so that everyone can read it in its entirety. But in it, you really emphasize how critical relevance is, especially in adolescence. So I'm wondering, like, what is really at risk when our adolescents don't see that connection between the things that they're learning inside of school and what they're experiencing outside of a school building?
Thank you. I think the real simple idea behind that article is that adolescents are really smart and they are not easily fooled. And if they think they're being babysat in a building, they're not going to focus. They're not going to put their full energy into that because they're too smart for that. And one of the ways they're smart is they can tell who is subjective and who's more objective. Subjective doesn't mean necessarily biased in a bad way. It's like their parents are subjective. We are subjective as teachers because we know them and we love them. And they probably know a little bit about how to manipulate us also and what we're looking for. And they are naturally, I think, drawn toward objective people in the real world who are, whose feedback will have a much bigger impact. I'm thinking about my first job at the end of middle school, working in a little kind of retail store. and how scared I was of my boss, who was a perfectly lovely person, but was terrifying because this person is not related to me, is not paid to be my teacher. She was actually paying me. And how when she finally let me run the store for just like 20 minutes while she went out for an errands, that was a piece of feedback from the objective world that totally changed who I felt I was as
Mm-hmm.
a person who struggled a lot in other ways. But this person trusts me to run her store, manage money, all of that. I think kids, before we can feel like valuable people just bubbling up from the inside, we need to absorb it from the outside. And adolescents are smart enough to know to seek objective adults to do something valuable for, so that they can reflect back our own value and show us that we're valuable people. So
Yeah.
that's where I'd go with it.
It sounds like that's really connected to feeling comfortable rising to the challenge, or at least like accepting a real life challenge that's out there. And I know that your new book, Challenge Accepted, really leans into that. And I'd love for everyone to take a look, find out more about it. We actually have the link there so that you can go ahead and find out more. Please go ahead and get it. It's an amazing book. It really is written for middle schoolers. However, I think it's great for humans in general to take a look at that. So would you say that that's accurate? So along with getting that real world feedback, it's also like being given the opportunity and the support to rise to challenges that mean something.
For sure. I think it's, finding, I think middle schoolers, often adolescents in general, have a, a lack of choice in their life. So I think it starts with feeling like you have some degree of control over the challenge you're choosing, then that you have some good company with you, like I was sharing earlier, and that there's some kind of relational field where this is all happening, and you'll get to kind of feed back the ups and downs of the adventure into that. But yeah, that book is intended to just give lots of options, kind of choose your own adventure style, all of which have been tested by lots of middle schoolers, to get out there and realize that you can be the author of your own story. Middle school is not something that is done to you, or doesn't have to be, that you can be really active in creating yourself. And there are a lot of places in the world that are actually receptive to middle schoolers, maybe despite how we think about that age.
Amazing. So in the spirit of Chris's Challenge Accepted book, if our audience has any real world challenges that they would like to drop in the chat, please do so, because again, we can all learn from one another here. Michelle, so your liberation and contribution are like really powerful through lines through all of your work. And you also have a book about that, right? So liberation, we have the link that we can drop below, and that's a lot of self-work. I picked it up when it was brand new, so it's excellent. I can attest to that. We would love for people to grab it. I'm wondering if you can do like a little storytelling for us right now. So what's a moment when you saw a student move from just learning about the world to like actually seeing themselves as part of it, and able to make an impact on it? And I'm using student loosely because I know that you work with adult learners as well. So feel free to, expand that definition however you need to.
Yes, I can go back to when I was a classroom teacher. There's so many projects, as you know, at High Tech High, we're project-based learning, and for me personally, many of my projects were very, very human-centered. So there's so many projects rolling in my head right now. I will tell the story of we did a project that had to do with students learning about, well, we call them new Americans now, but at that time we were still using the term refugees. And so my students in North County, San Diego, didn't have much experience with that population at all. And so we did a partnered project with the International Rescue Committee and their students. They have a group of students called Peacemakers who've recently come to the United States fleeing for different reasons, fleeing their home countries. And they're part of this program to not only practice their English, but to also kind of heal through testimony, being able to tell their story as a healing part of their journey. And so it was a collaborative project between my 11th graders and the Peacemakers. And a ton came out of it, spoken word, paintings, an art auction, a festival, totally student run empathy and arts festival, all of that. And the feedback, I would say, from any project I did in all of my tenure at High Tech High, the reflections from that particular project of what it meant to students to learn with and from people who had a completely different life experience from them. And all of the proceeds from the art that they sold went directly back to the peacemakers. But they did it. We try to do it the best way, where it wasn't my students were doing something for them. It was with them, because they were also a part of the festival and sharing and interacting. And of course, it was not a perfect project. There's things I would do differently, but I would say that project was the most transformational for young people to just start, because empathy was something I was really trying to work on with that particular year of students, or few years of students. And the series of projects that I did, whether it was they were working with elderly or refugees or people across different political lines, it helped develop empathy, because we can't expect them to learn it without creating opportunities and avenues for them to actually practice it, for ourselves to practice it as well as adults. So I would say any of those projects that where humans were at the center is where I saw the most transformation, and have had students write back, years later, saying they remember that project, or this project is why I moved into this field. And so that always feels good. But you're right. Now, it's been a while since I've taught young people. So I do have adults who also write back and say, this is why I am going to get my PhD, or this is why I'm going to, do this program. So that always feels good. Mel, I'm not even sure if I answered the question that you asked, but I did want to say something really quick about Chris's book that I'm excited to read, because I love that it sounds like you did what I did in terms of writing a book that is really accessible to educators and not like loaded with theory. And, we as educators, we know we need, what can we do on Monday this week? Like what's accessible for me to try out in like concrete ways. And so that's what I love about, at least what you shared about your book, is that it has a number of different ways for people to try things out. And I would say the same is true of Liberate as well. Now, I wrote it for classroom educators, but recently, and I think I've shared this with Mel before, but it has just gained a ton of traction with school leaders and superintendents. I don't know how or why, but I'm super grateful for it, because to be honest, that is how a lot of the more district-wide transformational change is happening. Because when just teachers are reading it, yes, they are transforming their classroom, and we're grateful for that, and the young people get to experience that. But what about the young people in the class next door to that teacher? They're not experiencing that same liberatory, situation. So now that you have districts where superintendents and school leaders are reading it and then buying copies for their teachers, and now it's an ecosystem of folks working toward liberatory learning in a liberatory community, that is just something I did not see coming at all. And so I'm just grateful. And just, if you haven't gotten it yet, get my book, Chris's book. You're going to be fine. That's all the reading you'll need for the rest of your life. By the way, this is not alcohol. It's water with salt on the rim. I don't know. I like salt. That's just how I move.
That's amazing. I can't wait to read it.
Well, I think this is the perfect time to bring on Ashley Dos Santos. So she's been listening backstage, and Ash is our What School Could Be Western strategist. And she's been a color commentator on The Big Think before. She's an amazing storyteller and a really strong force behind many of our storytelling initiatives here at What School Could Be. And I think curiosity and questioning is just like part and parcel of who you are, Ash. I just love working with you so much. So anyway, I know you must have a ton of questions from listening to this incredible conversation between Michelle and Chris. So I'm going to turn it over to you for the last little bit.
Thank you, Mel.
Oh, I think you're on mute.
Rookie move.
It has to happen at least once per hour.
You're welcome for being the one to do it. Thank you for having me here. I'm so happy to be part of this discussion, because I am a middle school teacher at heart. I taught middle school for 10 years in different settings at a very progressive independent school where, we all collaborated, and every teacher knew the learners, in up and down, and we'd have meetings and create our curriculum and experiential learning. It was beautiful. And then I transitioned to a very traditional public school, and I was like, whoa, this is messed up. Like, how do some learners get this experience and others get a completely different experience? And then to actually see the impact, of how young people across this country, the majority, are being dehumanized, on a mass scale, which is deeply painful and kind of pushed me out of the classroom. So for me, it's very important to see people doing this work specifically for adolescent learners and their leaders in the classroom, right? Their guides and teachers, because I got burnt out, like seeing the injustice and the pain and the lack of joy that I was having to share and promote, right? To be like that agent of the oppressor in my classroom was hard. And so thinking about just kind of that concept of what a lot of educators are experiencing alongside their learners. And then also middle years, like they go from this elementary school, typically they have one teacher, right? You can do interdisciplinary things. You can create that family culture. You have 30 students and work with them all day. And then all of a sudden you have 160 students. And, as a learner, you're only with it. You have now 6 adults telling you what to do in different ways. And so less time with each other to create that culture of joy and empathy and getting to know each other when you go into the middle school. So I love celebrating all the wins and what we can do, but then, let's keep it real. Also for people that are tuning in or watching and are like, yes, I want to do this, but I only have the energy to do it with this one group of students. Like I can only do it for 4 of my preps. Like the other 2, I'm just like worn out by the end of the day. Like liberation is draining, right? It's constant work all the time. You can't just take a pause. So with that in mind, what advice would you give? How would you sit alongside educators, like doing their best in their little silos, hold their hand and kind of encourage them to keep going, keep moving, and there is hope and all that.
Chris, do you want to go first since I talk so much?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you did not talk too much at all. I don't know if this is going to count as an answer because it's more than a small step, but I want to point to something that might be kind of an answer, which is the curious thing about most middle schools in the US is that majority have advisory time or something that's like that, homeroom, whatever you might call it. But probably if they're honest, 99% will say we have no idea what to do at this time. It's the lowest on our priority list. But I think there is something really cool that there's time already in the schedule, precious minutes, that is not usually strictly academic and could be a space where kids where you can generate with them a sense of belonging. And to me, that's where you turn around the journey of both being a middle school student and teacher, because we as teachers are as isolated and prone to losing belonging as kids are. So advisory to me is the kind of my favorite intervention point. That's, I think, where you can start to turn the nightmarish qualities of this into an adventure because you feel accompanied. You can start to facilitate more honest conversations about how things are going. And now even bigger steps, sorry, I'm totally losing the thread of the simple small steps, but when schools manage to create that experience for the teachers, which doesn't have to be totally radical. It could be one faculty meeting every so many weeks. We're going into advisory spaces for us so that we can connect with each other, because often I'm the only adult in the room all day long. And to be with other people to share how I'm doing and what my edges are and what's hard and what's working. It's simple, but I think really deep stuff if we make space for it. So I know that was not the simplest answer to achieve right away, but I'm going to pass it to Michelle, who probably has better thoughts on this.
No, we're building this plane together, brother. But there's so many things just to distill. Okay, I want to start with the belonging piece because the High Tech Graduate School of Education, we have our CARE network, which is an 8th grade on track network. And one of the things that was created in that network was a belonging bundle. And this belonging bundle is full of research, tried and true things that have worked to increase belonging. The folks in this network were able to increase belonging by 25% by enacting these change ideas that are in this belonging bundle, right? And what I love about it, and I can share it with Mel, and maybe we could put it on the What School Could Be app, is that there are light, medium, and large lifts, so that people, again, about accessibility. So to Ashley, your point, somebody feeling overwhelmed, like I can only do it with one class, but like, so there are ways for folks to start small, to level up, to increase that belonging. So I want to send, and it has, whether it's empathy interviews or student ciphers or, co-gens is what Dr. Christopher Emden calls it. Whatever it is, there are ways in. But the other thing, the point you brought up is sort of around this liberation, because some of our educators are in spaces where they don't have the freedom, to your point, to just do what, let's say we work with a group at Hawaii Tech Academy, charter school, a lot of freedom, a lot of autonomy. We can do amazing work with them. There's another group at the Center for Love and Justice that we work with. And I won't say this organization's name, but it's very oppressive. Like, people are checking the pacing guide every day. If you do it one day out of order, you're written up. Like, it's that kind of oppression. And I know you said like liberation is hard work. Living under an oppressive environment like that is also really hard work. It's hard work for the teachers and the students, not just physically. It's hard work on your heart. It's hard work on your mental. And so because they couldn't do that same freedom, liberatory project-based learning that we were doing in Hawaii, we would just do these like little, how do you level up to liberatory? Let's take this scripted curriculum that we know you hate, and how can we make these micro changes to level up to liberatory so that your students are seeing, are feeling more connected to it, and you're feeling more connected to it. And you're still going to be in this compliance space because sadly, you got to keep your job. We get that. But how are you able to add these elements of creativity, curiosity, and connection for the young people so that even in the compliance, you're able to create this liberatory window? And they were able to do it, and their students had an exhibition. It was beautiful. So I guess I'm trying to say that it is possible even in spaces where you feel like it can't happen there, because people would definitely say about this organization, like it just can't happen. And these teachers and young people were able to make it happen.
Thank you. So it sounds like micro little steps can slowly get you to a place where you can imagine doing bigger things. And then Chris, those advisory classes, and I've seen that at so many schools, right? They don't know what to do with the time. So what a gift for the educator. Let's find something to do with it. And those are your opportunities. So coming back to the theme of this big think, right? Justice, joy, and the adolescent journey. I think there's a misperception potentially of how adolescents experience joy, like this generation of kids, blah, 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 like fill it in with whatever, but really like autonomy, independence, feeling valued, like that brings me joy. Most like human beings a joy, and adolescents are no different. And so I'm also on the tune of like modeling joy for the young people in our lives. So I'm curious, maybe we all could share, is there like a moment you remember where you did like a pure, it's like you, like this is the thing where I am like, shoes off, cooking, dancing in the kitchen type joy, like no one's watching me. And then I shared that in my community of learners, kind of like taking a risk moment and how that was received. And then if you like continued on with it or, maybe evolved into something else. So just finding that inner joy and sharing it, and then, how the young learners potentially responded to
it. Yes. Do you want me?
Go for it, Michelle. Yeah.
Dancing, but you said like courage or risk taking. This was not risk taking to me. I love a stage of any kind. So like, but I don't think a single student ever got out of my class without dancing multiple times. So there were excuses to dance all the time. We're getting into westward expansion. I guess we're country line dancing today to kick us off, to like get us in the mood and like wake us up. Oh, we're getting into the 70s and the oil crisis, whatever. You know what we need? A Soul Train line. Let me tell you about Soul Train lines. We're dancing. Oh, the Independence, Declaration of Independence, Independence. I end up in dance. What if you choreographed a dance of something you wanted to be free from? And it's, you know, like, so yes, for me, it was dance and joy through dance, and them feeling more empowered. And when they see their teacher being, especially in the ninth graders, just being a scene and karaoke and all of that, it just gives them license to be who they are. Like every time we show up as ourselves in our full humanity, mistakes and all, that is teaching them that it is okay to like have a bad day, to express some feelings, to also be really excited when something cool happens. Like there are a range of emotions that are possible in the human experience, and it's okay to express those. So that's my take. Chris, what are you thinking?
Oh, I love it. I could feel the joy as you were describing that. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I guess for me, I was thinking first of this thing we talk about teaching or coaching teachers around the difference between self-care and self-renewal. That, you know, self-care is sometimes what we do to soothe. Maybe that's, you know, firing up Netflix or whatever it is. But it's quite different from self-renewal. Like self-renewal is when we tap back into, you know, Michelle, what you just described, that like joyful, playful, creative side. And it helps to, I think about them as two different things. So sometimes we're trying to be renewed, but watching more Netflix won't do it. But watching the Netflix was helpful to soothe, but then we needed to go take a different step. So for me, my self-renewal often comes through writing. And a thing I've been doing recently with my students that I lead advisories for is I'm writing a YA novel with them. And it's like the most fun and scary creative project I've ever taken on. I've written lots of nonfiction before, and that feels relatively comfortable. But writing a whole freaking novel is terrifying me. And they've been amazing editors, and they're cheering me on. And sometimes they're pointing out parts that really stink. So that feels like it's in that vein of being just open, weird, joyful. You know, a novel is always kind of autobiographical, so they're asking me where I got these crazy ideas. So it's that's been my way of tapping back into that.
Oh my gosh, I think that is probably the perfect way to end this, with just asking everyone out there to remember self-renewal, not self-care, but self-renewal, and taking that into their learning spaces every single day. Such a great way to end the conversation, Chris. Thank you so much for that. Ash, so much fun doing this with you. I want to thank you for being our color commentator. Michelle and Chris, I am just really, really grateful for your time and energy today, and for the many opportunities I've had over the years to talk with you and learn from you. It's just been such a joy for me to learn from you both. So thank you for being here today. And all of you out there who are joining us live or who are watching the recording, please don't forget to check out Michelle's work and Chris's work at their respective websites. They have so much more to offer than just this tiny, tiny bit that we were able to touch on today in this past hour. Thank you so much, all of you, for being a part of our What School Could Be community, and we can't wait to see you the next time. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mel. Appreciate you. Great chatting with you, Chris. Thank you, Ashley.
Bye-bye.
Bye.